Hello friends, welcome to our channel Knowledge Amplifier. So today in this particular video, I am going to discuss about Hive Metastore. Okay, what is this particular Metastore meaning and how to implement Hive Metastore in AWS Glue Catalog. Both the concepts I am going to cover in this particular discussion. Okay, so let us first try to understand what Metastore is with respect to Hive. Okay, so Metastore is nothing but a centralized repository of Hive metadata. Okay, like for example, if you have experience with Snowflake, then you might be knowing that all the Snowflake tables metadata are stored in information schema, right? Similarly, here in Hive, the centralized repository of the metadata is called Metastore, right? What it contains? It contains the metadata for different Hive tables and the relations. Like for example, the schema, okay, what are the different data types, what are the column names, okay, what is the location where that particular table is pointing to, okay, all these informations the metadata contains, okay, and that centralized repository of the metadata is nothing but Metastore, okay, and we can place the Metastore in various places. Different connectors you can use to connect, like for example you can use some RDS system, like for example MySQL RDS, okay, as Metastore, or maybe you can use some other system like AWS Glue Catalog, what I am going to discuss. Okay, so for example we are having our EMR, we will be creating some tables or views, whatever. If we want to store the metadata of those different objects of the database, that information, if we want, we can store in AWS Glue Catalog, and that can act like centralized repository. Okay, and now you might think, what is the advantage of keeping the Metastore or centralized metadata outside the cluster? The answer is, it will be giving us advantage in case of transient cluster. Okay, so suppose for example here your EMR is running, and there itself you have your Hive database tables and Metastore. You are using local Metastore, for example. Suppose you created some tables and all, and in the local Metastore that metadata informations are stored. Now suppose this particular EMR cluster spin down, then your metadata information will also be lost. Okay, so that's why nowadays, as many companies are going to transient cluster instead of persistent clusters, so they are suggesting to use Metastore outside the EMR cluster. Okay, so that if some other cluster spins up, they can point the Hive Metastore to the Metastore which is present outside the cluster, and from there any cluster can read that. Okay, that's why we are basically trying to keep remote Metastore. This is also called remote Metastore, okay, because it is present remotely, right? So now I am going to show you how all these things we can implement. So without any further delay, we'll be jumping to AWS Management Console. Okay, and these are some steps. So what is the first step? Obviously, we are going to play with EMR. We are going to log in EMR and then use the Hive to create some database and tables. All these experiments we are going to do. So for that, obviously, we require PPK file to enter in the EMR cluster using putty, right? So for that first step, I'll be going to EC2, and then here I'll be closing this. I'll be going to EC2 dashboard, and then here I'll be going to key pairs. Okay, and then here I'll create the key pair. Okay, demo yt glue Metastore. Okay, and PPK file will be downloaded. I am creating the key pair. Okay, so see, it is downloaded. Okay, first step is done. All the steps I'll be providing in the description box. No need to rewrite a single thing. Okay. Now what is the second task? That is launch the first cluster. Okay, so we are going to EMR, and then here we are going to create cluster. Okay, so here I will go to advanced option, and then here I will be deselecting hue and pig. For this particular demo, Hadoop and Hive are more than sufficient. Okay, then here very important point, AWS Glue data catalog setting optional thing. Okay, you have to check this if you want to use Glue data catalog as Hive table metadata centralized repository. Okay, that is Hive Metastore. Okay, if you want to use Glue as Hive Metastore, then you have to check this one. Okay, and then okay, fine. So after the last step is complete, cluster will enter in waiting state, not auto terminate. But auto terminate is something is required when we are working with transient cluster, right? We don't want to add any step. I am going to next. Let the network and EC2 as default. Number of cores I am keeping 1, just for demo purpose I am using that, so let it be. And then all these things let it be. I'll go to next. Okay, debugging and termination protection is not required. Okay, demo yt1 glue, this is the first cluster name. Okay, and then here all these things keeping unchanged. Now here see EMR role, default role will be creating, and here we need to choose the EC2 key pair which you can use to log in this EMR cluster. So I'll choose that particular TPK file just now what we created. Okay, that's pretty much it, and here we will create the cluster, right? So here our first cluster is getting created. Okay, it will take some time to create. Okay, now what we will do, let's see. So it is working, right? Now to log in EMR using putty, we need to give some SSH in the inbound rule. Okay, so see, give SSH in the inbound rule is the third step. Okay, so all I will do, I will go to this particular master security group. Okay, and then here if I go, this is the master one, I'll be choosing that security group. Document is empty. Okay, let's see. Okay, I got logged out. Let me log in back. Right, now I will go to security group for master, and then here I'll be choosing the master one, and then here in the inbound rule I will add SSH. Okay, and basically it will use port number 22 which we are going to use in putty as well, and then here for the time being I am keeping anywhere IPv4 which should be able to connect, and then we are going to save the inbound rule. Okay, that's pretty much it with respect to setting with respect to the security group, right? So that we'll have no problem to log in with putty. Another thing we need to do, I'll be showing you. So if I go to EMR, and here if we go to configuration, here see Hive side it is showing. So basically if you see, it is basically showing the glue it will be referring. Okay, right? So now we need to give this particular role which is created, okay, to so that it can access glue, right? So that one will be doing. So here different properties you can check. If you go to configuration, here this is the thing you are getting. So if I go to IAM, and then if I go to roles, here EMR EC2 default role is created, right, as part of EMR cluster launch. So here I'll be adding glue service role so that it will be having no problem. I'll attach the policy. Here I'll search for glue. Okay, glue service role I am giving so that it can easily read write in glue catalog. Okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, right. So I will go back to cluster. It is in starting phase. Let it complete. Till then, what is the next step? Let's see. Let the cluster spin up and let the cluster enter in waiting state. Then only will start working. Spin up another EMR cluster. Okay. So for the demo purpose, I will create another EMR cluster. So I'll be copying the name from there. That is demo yt1 glue. I'll create another cluster with demo yt2 glue. Okay. So here also I'll be deselecting these two, only keeping Hive, and this one I'm enabling use for Hive metadata, and then here I'm going to next. Okay, number of executor cores I am keeping 1, right, and keeping these properties unchanged. Here I will be giving demo yt2 glue. Okay, right, and then here I will go to next, and I'll be choosing this one. Okay, let me go to previous. I think debugging and termination protection is not required. I will go to next, and this is the EC2 key pair, and then we can create the cluster. Okay, so here our second cluster is also should be in starting phase. Okay, both clusters are in starting phase. Okay, right. Then what we will do, we will enter in the first cluster Hive and we'll execute some queries, like for example, create database if not exist hellotesting. Okay, hellotesting is the database name. So what should happen, as we have enabled glue data catalog as our centralized repository for Hive metadata. So here if I go to AWS glue, here if I go to catalog, okay, so here if I go to database, here that database should come. Okay, then if I execute use database, okay, that's fine, that is not hampering metadata. What we are going to do next stage, we are going to create one external table, okay, which is basically JSON data pointing to this particular S3 location. Okay, so what I did, I basically created one S3 bucket, okay, where I uploaded some JSON data so that I can create some external Hive table pointing to that particular bucket. Okay, so that we can read the JSON data from there. Okay, so here if you go to JSON data, here JSON data.json we created. The dataset also I'll be providing. So then we will create this external table. So as soon as we will create the external table, what should happen in the glue data catalog, under this particular database, these tables should be getting created. Okay, and it should be happening in automated fashion. We'll be checking that. Okay, so let's see what is our EMR cluster state. I will refresh this. Okay, see, the first cluster demo 1 YT glue is ready. I'll be just going to that, and then here I'll be copying the public DNS. Okay, I'll be keeping that somewhere. Maybe I'll be putting that here, and then here I'll be going to putty. I'll be pasting that same in the host name. I'll be going to SSH and then authentication. I'll browse the PPK file what we basically downloaded, demo YT glue Metastore testing. Just now what we downloaded. I will open that. I'll open. Okay. Click on yes and log in as the default user ID. I'm using Hadoop, right? And once that is done, beautifully using this kind of ASCII symbol, we are getting that we are launched in, we have entered in EMR clusters. And then here I will change the setting little bit so that it will be not having connection timeout issue. Maybe 1000, let me put, and then, yeah, that's pretty much it. And now what I will do, I will enter in Hive. Okay, right? So before creating any table, you just see currently here in glue, no database is there apart from the default database. Okay, what I will do, I will create a database. Okay, and then the database metadata at least should be reflected in the glue. That is the expectation. So I will run this particular one and hit enter. Okay, it is done. If I go to glue, maybe I need to refresh the page once. See, hellotesting is created. This is the database only what we created just now. Create database if not exist hellotesting, right? So you are understanding how EMR Hive and glue is communicating in the backend. Okay, and this is the basically IP address related information related to location with respect to our this particular cluster. Okay, then what we can do, we can use this particular database because we want to create some table pointing to this particular inside this particular database. Okay, right? And then here we'll be creating this external table. Okay, before that let me show you. If I go to this particular one, tables in hellotesting, that is the database which we just now created. If we click on that, currently it is having no tables because just now we created the database, right? But if I execute this and hit enter, then see it is done. Now if I go to glue and then maybe I'll refresh this page, see here we are getting the tables and it is also specifying what is the location of the data, right? Because this is an external table, it is pointing to some S3 location data, right? That's what it is showing. Okay, if I click on that, you will see not only location, it is capturing the schema level information also. Just now what DDL we executed, the complete schema information we are getting here. Okay, location, schema. So this is nothing but metadata. Okay, and here glue is acting like centralized metadata for our Hive. Okay, right? Maybe I can execute something. Maybe select star from this particular table, limit 10. Okay, just to show you that it is working. It has nothing to do with metadata. See here it is perfectly working, right? Now, as a next step, what I will do, so first we created one external table. Now I will create an internal table, okay, where we are creating this particular test, this kind of typical name I have given as select star from the first table what we created, which is an external table where isActive equal to true. Okay, so isActive basically one column, as you can see here in the glue metadata also isActive is there, which is string, but it contain only boolean type of data, that is true or false. Okay, right. Now we will create an internal table. Basically we are not specifying an external keyword or location, so obviously it will be internal or managed table by Hive, and that we are creating from the first table, okay, by a where clause, right. And then if I go to glue, before that just see here, if I refresh this page, okay, currently database default is selected. If I go to database, if I select hellotesting and then click on tables in hellotesting, currently only one table is there, but we are going to create another table, and here internally MapReduce started, okay, right. Let's see, it is going to take some time, and see, it is done. Okay, now you can query this particular table. Okay, maybe for example select star from this. Okay, so if I select, obviously we will be getting all the data which is having isActive equal to true. Like for example select distinct of isActive from the table. Okay, obviously we will be getting only one distinct value, right? So let's see. So here again MapReduce started, is in running state. See, only we are getting true. So perfectly this thing is working as expected. If I go to glue and refresh this glue centralized repository, we will be getting this particular table. Okay, and it also contain all the metadata, like for example schema information. But point to be noted, here this time the location is this kind of thing, which is basically belonging to some location, belonging to that particular cluster only, because we created internal table. So data will be stored inside that cluster only, not in some external S3 location. Okay, right? I hope you are getting. Now I will create another internal table, okay, which will contain only those records which is having isActive equal to false. Okay, hellofalse is the table. Okay, here I will execute. I think it got stuck. Let me duplicate the session. Unable to open, host does not exist. What happened? Let me check. EMR cluster, if I go, if I refresh this page, oh, I think my internet is gone. Sorry for this. Let me connect. Okay, right. I think it got aborted due to internet issue. Let me try to duplicate this session. Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience. We log into Hadoop. And then let me enter in Hive. Okay. I am currently in my first cluster only. So if I show you, if I go to AWS Glue console, if I go to database, if I go to hellotesting, if I go to tables in hellotesting, currently these two tables got created. Okay. But the last table what we are trying to execute, that is this particular query, is not executed yet. Okay. Right. So you can see this query is not executed due to internet issue, but no problem. What we will do, we will execute that now. Okay. Right. Table not found, this one. JSONmigration, where is it? Okay. I think as we are entering in a new cluster, new Hive environment, so I have to use this particular database. Then only I will be able to access the earlier tables. Okay, now I can use this particular query. I'll close this earlier cluster, not use. Okay, now here let it create. Okay, so hello false, this is the table name. We should get hello false, another table which will only contain those records which is having isActive equal to false. Okay, it is done. And then here if I refresh this, see hello false is coming. Again if I go, same kind of schema is there, but the location is in basically internal EMR location. Okay, that is belonging to that particular specific cluster only, right? And let it not terminate, so I'll change the setting also. Right. Okay. Then what we will do as a next step, we will try to see whether these tables what we created basically in this particular EMR cluster, okay, that is first cluster, whether those are accessible via second cluster or not. Okay, so for that what we will do, I will refresh this particular page once and I will log in second cluster. Okay, that is demo YT2 glue. Okay, so here I'll be logging in, and basically this is our master DNS. I'll be copying and I'll be keeping somewhere here. Okay, right, and then I will again launch another putty. Okay, I'll paste that one. I'll be using same authentication because that's how I give the setting in front of you only. And then here I'll open, right, and click on yes, and then log in as Hadoop. Okay, so this is a completely new cluster. Okay, now what I'm trying to show basically that if you're using some remote system to store the Hive metadata, then the advantage is that particular metadata, maybe one table created in one particular EMR cluster can be used by other EMR cluster as well. Okay, so this is completely a new environment, which is our second environment, right? So this is our first environment where we just now created some tables and all. Now we'll go to our second environment and we'll execute something. So what we'll do first we'll try to see whether this table, okay, hello false, okay, this table what we basically created in first EMR cluster, whether that is accessible in second EMR cluster or not. Okay, so we entered in the second EMR Hive cell, and then here I'll be using this particular database. Okay, right, and then here I will execute select query. Okay, because this is a remote Metastore, so at least we should get that, because this particular EMR cluster also while launching we have specified that refer the glue catalog as Metastore. Okay, so if I run, we should get the data, and see we are getting perfectly all false. Okay, right, all isActive is false, right, perfect. Okay, now what we will try to do, if you go to Glue console and if I go to tables, currently hello false is there, right? Now this hello false table we created from the first EMR cluster. Now what we will try to do, we will try to drop from the second EMR cluster and we will see whether the metadata is getting synced up or not. Okay, so we are using drop table hello false and then we will hit enter. Okay, right, it is done. If I go to glue data catalog, here hello false is currently there. If I just refresh once, see from the metadata itself hello false is gone. That means, see, now these two EMRs are basically interchangeably working. Okay, basically they are both meeting their metadata in this centralized repository of glue catalog, right? Now what we will do, try to access both the internal and external table. Okay, so basically in the first EMR cluster we created one external table and two internal table, right? One internal table name is this one, another one is hello false, which just now we dropped. So let us see whether we are able to access or not. So if I execute select star from this particular table, okay, which is basically another internal table what we created, and limit 10, if I give limit 10, okay, we should get top 10 records which contain only true. Okay, this is perfectly accessible. Now we'll see whether we are able to access this external table or not from the second EMR cluster. Okay, right, so here all I will do, I will change the table name. Okay, let's see. So here also we are getting only difference is it is combination of true false is activity. Okay, right, perfect. Okay, now what we will try to do, see the difference. Okay, this particular table 1 is internal table. Okay, that's why it is giving the location, which is basically an IP address of first EMR cluster. But the second one, there is this table, is basically external table. Okay, now we will see the advantage of external table over internal table. Okay, now suppose for example your first cluster I am terminating. Okay, currently we have seen that both the tables are accessible in the second cluster also, although we have created using first EMR cluster. Okay, all I will do, I will terminate the first EMR cluster. Okay, so I'll terminate this. Okay, now it is terminating, termination process started. Okay, now what should happen ideally, although from the metadata, this table, which is basically an internal table which is pointing its data somewhere in the location of the first EMR cluster, as that EMR itself we are spinning down, the cluster is going down. So now this managed table data we cannot access. Okay, although we should access this data because this is pointing to some external S3 location. Okay, so let's see. So here it is terminating. Let's wait for some time. Till then, what I will do for this second EMR cluster, I will change this setting. Connection 1 I will increase to some higher value so that we will not have connection amount issue. Right? So here see it is terminated. Okay. Now we will try to access. Okay. What we'll do? We'll try to access the internal table first. Okay. Just hit enter. Okay. Let's see what happens. See, it failed. What it is telling? No route to host from this particular location. Okay, failed on socket timeout exception. Obviously timeout happening because internally the Hive is going to glue. Okay, and in glue it is checking where is the data. It is checking that okay, here is the location where data is, but this particular location is belonging to first EMR cluster which is already spinned down. So it is unable to communicate and it is giving timeout issue. Okay, but this table, okay, JSON migration, this one although we created in first EMR cluster, but as this is external table, so we should not have any issue to access that. Okay, so see, although we have not created this in the second EMR cluster, in first EMR cluster we created which already is pinned down, but as this is external table and already the metadata is obviously available for both cases, internal or external, whether the first cluster is dropped or whatever, metadata is not gone, right? So that's why you are able to see the metadata or this table itself. Otherwise, if metadata is dropped, then it will show that no table found like that kind of exception, but it is not showing. Why? Because glue contains the metadata, but actually data is gone because data is present in first EMR cluster. But for the second table, that is this one what we are trying to execute, we should get the data. See how beautifully we are getting? The reason is this particular table is nothing but one external table pointing to this location, right? So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is you can use any remote engine to use that as a centralized repository for your Hive, but make sure when you are working in transient clusters, then better to use external table so that you can at least access those things. Okay, right? So that's all I wanted to discuss in this video. I hope you understood how to use Hive and Glue data catalog together. Basically how to use Glue data catalog as external Metastore for Hive. What is the concept of Metastore? That is nothing but centralized metadata repository you can consider, right? So I hope you understood this. All the codes I'll be providing in the description box or in the comment section. And don't forget to give Glue access to the EMR EC2 default role. Then only EMR will able to communicate with Glue, right? And then once the POC is done or once your requirement is fulfilled, don't forget to terminate the EMR clusters. Okay, otherwise unnecessarily it will make huge cost. Okay, right? So it is terminating, and that's all for this video. If you enjoyed this particular session in big data domain, then please like, share and comment, subscribe our channel if you have not subscribed till now, and don't forget to press the bell icon to get the notification of our latest videos. Thank you.